They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Coming up on Life with Brian.
And you grabbed me by the arm and said, "No, that's not the Celtic way." And 5 goals later, Brian, I still think I was right.
Bit shocking for me, actually, because it appears that you and Tommy Sheridan have put me out to pasture with regards to my football career.
So I think I said, "Grease is up, darling. Geese it tight, jailhouse."
Hello, hello. You've joined Life with Brian, the Brian McClare podcast, hosted by myself, Mark, my fellow co-host Matthew, and of course, Brian McClare, a purveyor of fine finishes and assorted assists for Celtic and Manchester United. How are you both?
Excellent, thank you, sir.
Brian, what have you been up to? Anything of note since we were last together?
The most notable thing that's happened, it's not to me today, is another ongoing particular thing with regards to one of the football teams that we tend to talk about quite a lot, is Manchester United, and that they're moving a friend of mine who's sat for about 30 years, which is now behind the home dugout, and they're moving him somewhere else, but I think it's still in the stadium and not to FC United. So
this isn't Sir Alex Ferguson you're talking about, is it?
Well, it may well be, but it's not. No. He's not allowed in now, is he? He's always in the director's box, isn't he? So,
yeah. Well, unless he starts paying for his ticket, I've got a feeling he might get turfed out.
The shocking thing about that revelation is that Brian's had a friend for 30 years, isn't it?
Right.
As ever, we are joined by a guest, and with us on this episode is an actor and Celtic fan known for roles in Trainspotting 2, The Acid House, Take the High Road, and many more. It's a big welcome to the show to Simon Weir. How are you, Simon?
Hi, guys. How you doing? Very well.
Good, good.
The research is meticulous on this programme, Simon. And
I expect no less, Brian. I expect no less from you.
The research that I did is it's a bit shocking for me, actually, because it appears that you and Tommy Sheridan have put me out to pasture with regards to my football career.
In which particular incident was this? We played a couple of times, I think. Yeah.
Celtic State of Mind in pre-season. We were having a good debate about the old firm games.
Yes.
When you decided that you and Tommy Sheridan have decided that a younger group of players are now needed. Therefore, I am no longer needed, so it was a bit of a shock to me.
That's you've simply misread that in a sort of paranoid sort of way. Brian, what we've all got to face at some point is that Dr. Time is called. However, no, Tommy's probably the only one that's fit enough to be playing with the young ones just now. I'm a 10-minute guy. I think when I played with you last time, we were under the cosh. We were playing quite a young Rangers team the last time, if you remember. We were struggling a bit. And I was very much of the opinion of just hoof it. Just empty, clear it out. And you grabbed me by the arm and said, "No, that's not the Celtic way." And 5 goals later, Brian, I still think I was right.
Well, there's the beauty of football, isn't it? It's a matter of opinions, isn't it? So
exactly, but you know a lot more about it. I was just delighted to be on the pitch for you.
The funny thing about that game, which is the only one that I actually attempted to play in, was that Frank McGarvey, who was the manager, wasn't he? The Celtic manager, wasn't he? Derek Johnson, I think, was the manager of Rangers. And before I was ready and everything prepared on the pitch, we're ready to go. And for some reason, I wasn't there just before the game kicked off. So Frank wouldn't put me on.
He has a long memory for things like that.
He put me on. Clearly, it was something that had happened going back 30 years before that he was upset with me about. Yeah, he did try and claim a goal that I'd scored at Motherwell once because there's no cameras there.
You know fine well that's true, don't you? There will be something that goes back all that way. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore to
No, it was great.
In fact, Frank was the manager for these teams as well. And he was great fun. But I used to love the team talks before, which were directly from 1979. They were absolutely brilliant. The 4-4-2 thing wasn't really working for us either. I remember him and Tom Boyd having a bust up in the dressing room as well.
That's right.
I loved about them. Because those games were, for the layman like me that was just delighted to be on the pitch with you guys, to get a sense of what any sort of old firm would possibly be like in the old days. The players still took it really, really, really seriously. We were there to get dressed up in strips and get photographs and kick a ball about and just be delighted. But the will to win, the mentality was still unbelievably strong. That's what I was most sort of shocked and impressed about with all you guys.
Well, that game, they say that halftime event when Frank would come in, and it was like it was as if it was the Scottish Cup final or the last Premier League game you need to win to win the trophy. It was like that, and he just laid into people that way, everybody, and Tommy wasn't having it. He stood up, and at which point I had to leave because I was going to start. I was chuckling away at myself anyway, but I didn't want to get involved in any of this kind of thing that was doing. So I left the dressing room because I thought that's just ridiculous. It's like a charity game, and we're going to have
we loved it. No such thing as a
Celtic and an ex-Celtic legend having a fight and a proper physical fight nearly. That's what it nearly came to. So
I loved it. I mean, again, Frank used to say to me, he says, "What's wrong with you? You're a good player." And he must have confused me with somebody else. Because I got like 7 games with him, and every time I was terrible. I can't kick a ball. It got so bad that Rudy Vata, who was a beast in defence beside me, was turning around going and saying, "Why you kick ball like a little girl, you man?" I'll take that, Rudy. I'll take that. So, yeah. No, it wasn't maybe the most crowning point of our careers, but I just thought it was a great thing to do. So you're very much invited to the next one. Please don't think we put you out to pasture.
I sat there and I was crying for about an hour after that thing when I thought, oh, dearie me, So I look forward to seeing Sheridan in the next few weeks to ask what his particular views. He'll just deny it anyway.
Maybe you'll just have to try a bit harder next time.
I couldn't try any harder than I did.
You could have stayed in the dressing room at half time.
I could have stayed in the dressing room before the game.
I just want to set the scene a little bit. I mean, it's no big secret you're a big Hoops fan, Simon. Yeah. Obviously, from that last 5 minutes chatting to Brian. But I just wanted to get a little insight into your fandom with Celtic, where it all began, and the years since. Yeah,
it was. I think the first game was in United, 1982, Premier League season. The United and Aberdeen, obviously, as Brian will testify, were the new firm at the time, and they were possibly the strongest teams in Scotland. So the league was far more exciting, I would say, then as well. There was 4 teams really vying for the championship, and it wasn't an easy time to be a Celtic fan either. It was a very good time to grow up in that, because to win a Scottish Cup was a big thing still then. It was far more competitive. But I remember going to the first game and just follow. It's that age-old story about when you first go to Celtic Park or any football ground, and your first memories of walking up, over the terracing, down the steps, and just the green bays of the playing pitch, how close you are to it. The smell of cigar smoke and bovril and pies, the noise, the ear-shattering noise as you just go over that first step and you see the green crush barriers. It just stays with you forever. And I think you still get that thrill every time as a fan you go there. But I remember the first game, or the second game might have been Aberdeen, and it was Charlie Nicholas was in his pomp there as well. And he was doing keepy-upsies before the game, and a girl broke from the crowd and ran up to the semicircle and kissed him. And I thought this is it. This is rock and roll football, man. This is why I'm here at this club. So that was very exciting. And he did keepy-upsies, turned it around and put it over his head in the top corner. Just great, sublime football. And then of course coming through and watching Brian, and when he was playing with Mo Johnson, and just an amazing time for Celtic before Mo obviously went the other way.
To put that in context, though, Simon, you coming up over the terrace and seeing green, I think you did as I did. We didn't play on grass in the organised football. We played on red ash.
Yeah, please, yeah. I mean, I was briefly, flirted with the idea of being a player as well, and because I was tall, I managed to get a trial down at Clydebank, and the Clydebank were still a Premier League team then as well. So I got signed for the under-15s and under-16s. There was an S-form down there, and I played a season and a half, I think. But it was the same thing. We played down at Dulceta Park, So Kilbowie was the local ground, but we were in Drumchapel. And you trained beside the first team on red blaze, or red ash, I think you call it in England, but red blaze. So I've still not got skin properly grown on the knees because of it, but it was a surface that the game was never cancelled. So there was a lot more football getting played because of it, but it was a hell of a surface.
You had a bit of a fascination, I heard, of collecting Celtic players' autographs, didn't you? I just wondered if you ever wrote to Brian asking for a moniker.
I have a plethora of Brian McClair autographs. I would write to players all the time because we used to get shoot in Match magazine, me and my brother Robin, and we would basically just rip them apart, pretend you were a Portsmouth fan, and write it off to get the whole Portsmouth team. And then you would be a Sunderland fan. You would get all that next as well. But I mean, genuinely, I was a Man United and a Celtic fan. So to get Celtic autographs, the difference was then, though, the players were still around. There's a big separation now with players in headphones coming off buses and, half a mile away from the fans who are all penned in. It was different then. Celtic's training ground was still at Barrafield. It was still a walk from the ground down to the old training pitch. We were very much embedded and part of the community. So anyone in Glasgow, you would bump into Celtic players and in Fraser's or book signings or just generally in town. They were far more amenable and getting close to then as well. So it felt like it was easier for the working man to get off the bus and be going to football training. So I think then it was just a completely different time. But football fans were my rock stars. So I collected so many autographs from all around the world. I got Barcelona. I wrote to Gary Lineker, who sent me the whole Barcelona team at the time. It was great. I wrote to him about 4 times. I wrote to John Aldridge so much at Liverpool. He wrote me a note back, and he had like Kenny Dalglish, John Barnes, all the autographs, all the people I wanted. But I wrote to him incessantly because he made the mistake of writing back. And when she'd written back, he'd opened that door. And I got a letter. I've still got the letter, and it's from John Aldridge, and it's almost tear-stained. Please, Simon, I cannot do this anymore. It was like a romantic breakup. So I left him alone for about 6 months, and I thought, you know what, I'll get him when he goes back to Oxford or something. So I did.
You never had to tell anyone to leave them alone, Brian, did you? Not me, I don't think.
No, there's not. It's still a kind of thing that astonishes me, Simon, that I've had stuff sent to me, right, at places where I've never lived.
Yeah, so the postman will find you.
And no, but there's got to be different. Whatever these people find out, some contact, some way of contact, and then, as I say, that that is eventually, some random person's turned up with something and goes, that I think this is for. I believe that this person. And it's like, and it's some of the stuff they send you is not that you're asking for. You're back in the time you're asking for a signed autograph and maybe a little picture card, which was the fashion of the day. Some people are sending you stuff that's been signed by loads of people. Strips.
Barras.
They're like strips. And I'll keep them for about a year.
Quite right. Yeah, exactly. Quite right. Get valued.
And then I went.
Yours makes it worse or better.
And then sometimes you do. I had to go to. I wanted to get some for a friend's birthday, and I know a guy in North Manchester who had some Dennis Law memorabilia.
Right.
So I was going to collect a Dennis Law signed strip from my mate's same mate that's getting moved for his 70th birthday, and I looked up the address I had on this thing I'd had for at least a year, right, maybe longer. And it wasn't that, well, it was a wee bit of a walk, but I like a wee walk, So I thought, I'll go. So I went up in public transport, got 2 trains, went up North Manchester, and I walked up to this street that was there, and it was a cul-de-sac anyway. The weird number, and for whatever reason, I couldn't find this actual number, and I was thinking, I'm just going to post it through somebody's door, and they're bound to know who this person is that collects all this stuff. Next thing somebody shouts, but no, Chalky, and all that. Turn around, he goes, how you doing? He goes, what are you doing here? And I was like, you're not perhaps this guy. He went, fucking hell, yeah, I am. I goes, I just threw him the thing, right? And then they said, oh, thanks, I'm just going out. Do you want a lift anywhere? At which point I went, no, anybody that can find me.
Yeah.
What these steps, I'm not getting in the car with you, man, right?
Exactly.
So I walked for about an hour from there to this other guy's house.
Exactly. Hand delivered by Brian McClair, though. It might have been a year later.
Yeah. Hand delivered,
valued for that. Yeah. That was very nice of you, Brian. That was a very kind thing to do.
Yeah, so.
That brings me on nicely to something I wanted to ask you about as well, Simon. Didn't you once design a Celtic shirt and never get the credit for it?
I did, yeah. Well, I got the credit at the time. So I got a letter back from Davy Hay was the manager at the time. It was 19. I found the original letter the other day with the original drawings, and it's slightly different than what you might remember, Brian, as the European strip. I think it was 85, 86, and it was a white strip. You only wore it once, I think, in a charity match or a tour match. White strip with a green panel on the top, a little bit of black sort of detailing on it as well. And it was a beautiful looking strip. Celtic called it the European strip, and it was in the official Umbro catalogue. And it was a couple of letters. I mean, I was drawing cartoons and sending them to Davy Hay at the time. So this was just the next step before I got the gumption up to ask for a signed jersey, because that was the holy grail. Because in those days, the jerseys were just handed down. I got a letter from Billy Medale years later, and he said, "We just hand the jerseys down to the boys' club, so they're in no state to give anyone by the time they're all done." So that was the holy grail, was to get a signed jersey. So you build up to it. So I wrote for autographs, cartoon, the Celtic Kiddos, I think it was called, and then I wrote. I was sort of designing football strips at the time as well. Sent this in, got a lovely letter back from Davy Hay, and I think he said we have noted all details of same. And it was only about 2 years later when I got the Celtic calendar. There it was. A bit different. I designed one with yellow, I think, yellow piping at the side. This one had black detailing. But that was about the only difference. So I'm still claiming it. It was my jersey. I designed the European strip, the third strip, worn once. I've got one picture of, I think it's Anton Rogan wearing it, but if I get another version of it, I'm going to fire it down. Ryan can model it for me.
This all brings up so many questions about your youth and your childhood. It sounds very similar to mine.
You know, I wasn't an errant schoolboy. I did go to school. But no, my childhood was I was and I am and remain football obsessed.
Well, you said about being football daft, particularly Celtic, who you've got a great affinity for. But tell us about Third Lanark and your mission to resurrect the former Scottish League club and the wonderfully atmospheric Cathkin Park.
Yeah, well, Third Lanark was, I didn't know it had any sort of connection to Third Lanark. And just to explain what it is, it's in what looks like an abandoned park, just a stone's throw from the now Hampden Park. And it's in Cathcart Road. And you wouldn't see it from the road because it's all trees. It's all completely surrounded by trees. And there's one little council sign that says Cathkin Park. But I'd looked for it for years. Could never find it. I'm from the West End originally, so I'd moved to the south side when I came back from London and went for a run. And one day came over, I walked into this wee park, went for a run, came over a bank, and suddenly there was 3 sides of existing terracing. It's overgrown. I mean, the council planted trees there in the 80s and as a nursery, didn't pay for it, and then they grew out of control. So it's become this, it's almost like if you look at pictures of Lisbon, where Celtic won the Cup in '67, they've got trees and bits of that, so it kind of looks slightly overgrown. It's got a similar kind of feel to that. But in the middle of it is this amazing Victorian, it's like a Greek amphitheatre, it's still a cathedral of football. And so I did a bit of family history. I was kind of obsessed with family history as well. That was my latest obsession. And discovered that my great-grandfather, whose name was John Weir, was a number 9 for Third Lanark. He played for Airdrie as well, played for loads of clubs, but he was Third Lanark for 4 or 5 seasons and scored a debut hat-trick against Aberdeen. So he was my new hero. So I researched all his games as well. And I'd noticed that I had a bit of time. Obviously, being an actor, the one thing you have sometimes is plenty of time. So as a wee project, I just started restoring bits of the terracing and the pitch wall, and it was going really well. And then one day a journalist came by and said, "What you doing?" Told him the family connection. He got me in touch with the current amateur Third Lanark team that had just started up. And I got invited onto the board. I eventually started a limited company and then trademarked the badge. So we restarted it properly, and it's still going to this day. So I've recently just bought the trademark back. So fingers crossed. The plan is it's the most famous football team to have disappeared completely. The sort of similarity would be with Rangers, who went bust but were put into receivership and had all that as well, and then had a bit of time at least to reinvent themselves. Third Lanark never had that. It was straight to bust. Gates were closed. Players were the registrations were back to the SFA, and it was 1967. It was without a doubt, it was the most successful year for Scottish football of all time, even beating England. Celtic won a European Cup, two of Scottish teams in European semi-finals. And this was allowed to happen. It would never be allowed to happen nowadays. There's different things in place. But because of bad management and theft, basically, the club was bankrupt. And the stories about the last few seasons are brilliant. You know, even Henry McLeish, who was the First Minister of Scotland, who played for East Fife, would come and play. He said, even in games during the week, reserve games, you'd have to bring your own light bulbs. There were no light bulbs. So this is where I'm sure Brian Clough got his ideas for cold showers and no light bulbs and tiny dressing rooms, because that's exactly what Third Lanark did. Designed a tiny wee away dressing room. There was a great story of the players it was freezing one day and they had a wee. It was like Fulham's Craven Cottage Pavilion. Third Lanark's ground. It's not there anymore. This building, but it had one of those Victorian pavilions. And I always loved these buildings with these old sort of Victorian architecture. And they had braziers in there to keep it hot. And Ali MacLeod was playing there, the former Scotland manager. And when he was playing, his mum was the biggest fan of the world, and she used to batter people with her umbrella that slagged off her boy. Well, one day they turned round and had just put their clothes in, and the place was on fire because clothes had gone over the brazier, it had spilled, and nearly burned down the building. That's the sort of club Third Lanark was. Mm-hmm. So these stories you just absolutely fall in love with, and the fact that it went bust. They'd scored 100 goals 2 seasons before. They'd let in about 80, but they'd scored 100 goals. And the players and the club were all dispersed. And a lot of those fans lost their club. They never went to Celtic and Rangers. Some were obviously swallowed up, but a lot of them just lost their football club. Some went to support Pollock and junior teams. But my plan is the team have been running really well for the last almost 20 years now as a good amateur team. But I'm really looking for the club to go junior. And junior is the semi-pro in Scotland, you know. So I think if the club went junior, then I could retire very, very happy, because then you're back in the professional ranks. And I think that's where they deserve to be. It's such a famous old name, Third Lanark. You know, they were the Third Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. So it's got all that military history to it as well. Fascinating club, fascinating story. I'm even considering writing a play about it. But will anyone come?
I can think of 3.
Have you been?
Yeah, I've been there. I took a little training session for some of the girls at Hampden.
Did you?
Clifton Park. Yeah, and the guy was there from the Jimmy Johnson thing, so I got to go and see the inside that.
Of course, Jim Simonetti.
That amazing thing. You wouldn't think there was anything like that inside
exactly.
that hut. Well, not hut. It's a little building, and Mark's got relatives not far from there. So
you say you've been there, Mark?
Yeah, my in-laws just live up the road, so I've been to Catherine Park a couple of times. And I said I've seen you play there, Simon. Actually,
excellent.
Maybe about 10 years ago, you were playing for a team who were wearing a Scotland strip.
Scotland Writers.
That's right, Scotland Writers. Yeah, that's right.
Third Lanark. Yeah. Was I not in goals and let in 3?
I think you were. Yeah, you were in goal. That's right.
That was deliberate, man. That was deliberate.
Yeah, I thought so at the time. Yeah, I thought you were better than that, and you were just sort of coming down to their level.
Exactly. You got to slum it now and again, you know, to get more active involvement. You know, got the boys involved. No, it was great, because the Scotland Writers team was another thing that we got invited to do. It was great. It was to celebrate the 1872 game. It was 125th anniversary, I think we did it. And we actually booked Hamilton Crescent, where the first game was played, because obviously 1872, when football was first really, becoming organised in Scotland, and Queen's Park are dominating, there wasn't football grounds. So cricket grounds. This is why cricket and football, I've always loved cricket. And cricket and football have always got this, they've got this sort of brotherhood that they always had. You wouldn't have one without the other. It was the biggest, mass participation sport in Scotland before football was. So the cricket grounds were established. They had cricket pavilions. Even Rangers' first ground, they bought the pavilion from a cricket team. So Hamilton Crescent was the first place where we played, and we beat England. We beat England, I think, 2-0 that day. And a lot of famous Scottish writers joined the team. So that team continues as well. So that was my 2 loves. I brought my international colleagues and my Sunday League team in a battle of wills at Catherine Park. One of my favourite days. I'm amazed you were there.
Yeah, well, I think there was a Queen's Park game on this directly after it, so I kind of had to wander down and then went up to Hampden to watch Queen's Park with the other 30 people who were there.
Yeah, what a disappointment it must have been for you. We doubled the crowd that
day. Now we've got Socrates, of course, on the podcast, but tell us who your favourite Brazilian midfielder is and how his name lives on in your daily life.
Well, my favourite, obviously Socrates I adored. I adored Socrates. He was the 1982 team, I think, is what really, when we talked about 1982 season, that was me first formatively remembering, a World Cup. And obviously I was going to the games with my dad by then as well. But that Canary yellow strip in the heat of Spain on the telly, I just absolutely fell in love with Brazilian football. And the 1982 team obviously is famously for, the best team never to have won the World Cup. It was a 1970 team that was what everyone saw was cruelly robbed by the cheats of Italy at that time. And Paolo Rossi coming back and things as well and just destroying them. But for Scotland to get pitched up with them as well was just the most exciting thing in my young life. Because I was going to Scotland games as well. So I'd been to a few Scotland games, so I was really torn. But I watching as a Scotland fan, I wanted Brazil to win. Even when David Nery had scored. And there's that famous story of David Nery's done this, what was described as a toe poke, which was actually a belter of a half volley. And as he ran back to the halfway line, Souness said to him, "Oh, you made them fucking angry." And then we got pumped 4-1. But amazing. But in that, it was the Zico goal. Adair I loved. I was torn between Adair and Zico because Adair could hit it without saying it was left foot. And because it was the tango football, it would just move like that vertically in midair. But Zico's free kick was everything I was in love with about football. I didn't see a better one until Davy Provan, 1985 Scottish Cup final. The way the ball would pass Alan Ruff, and he didn't even raise his arm, top corner, and it just nestled. That tango football nestling in the back of the goals, and the Zico, as you see behind me. I'm in the office for my store, but I've got Zico shirts everywhere. The Zico I fell in love with. So he was nicknamed the White Pelé, and he was my favourite player from then on. So fast forwarding a few years, I was doing a TV show. I was doing Take the High Road at the time. We had a charity game, and there's a team up here called Dukla Pumferston. You've probably played for them.
I've heard of them. I've not played for them though. I'm getting to the age where I should maybe get a game now though.
Listen, still going to leave it alone, man. We're really joking. Jesus. Hey, Thomas Sheridan.
Tony Higgins used to tell me about them all the time. Dukla Pumferston.
Dukla Pumferston's a great name, and it came from remember Naked Video? It was eventually Naked Radio. It was a great BBC sketch, and they had Dukla Pumferston Sawmill and Tannery, and it was like a Sunday league team, and it was all on radio. It was brilliantly done. So this charity team then comes out of that, Dukla Pumferston, and it's full of all old firm stars and great Scottish players. But the goalkeeper was Alan Ruff. And I never scored because as I said, I was tall and keen, but never a great player. But I got one hit and half volley, and it went top corner. Alan Ruff didn't move because he was about 50, but it went top corner, and he turned around and he went, "It's fucking Zico." So for one day, I was fucking Zico. So when it came to my wife's background was fashion, so we moved back up from London. We had a wee theatre company. We were touring around a play, and we found this wee shop unit. So why don't we just try sort of, a sort of sports themed football shop? Retro sports and fashion was the idea. It was getting quite big then. Football shirt collecting was getting quite big then as well. So I had this idea for trying to get away from Celtic and Rangers, much more international football. The Diego Maradonas, obviously, the Zico, Socrates. So we opened up a shop, and the first name that came to mind was fucking Zico. So instead of they dropped the effing and put in Zico. So the shop's been Zico ever since. So we started that. Eventually we moved. The shop did really well, became a cult hit. I got a job on River City at the time. So it was all going really, really well. And then we got offered a main door shop, because this was like in a covered market. We got offered a main door shop in Queen Margaret Drive. And as Brian knows, that's student land. It's just before Mary Hill. It's just at the cusp of Byers Road. And not a customer came. Nobody came past the invisible barrier of the Botanic Gardens. So we were out of business. Then we got a rogue landlord who was fraudulently signing my name. Another story for another time. So we got, the long and the short of it is, we got bumped out of there and we went bust. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm rehearsing a show in a venue called Bads, where there's a lot of podcasts and things take place. It's a really good venue. And I noticed that there was these shop units available in the Barras market. And the Barras market, Brian knows it really, really well. Barras market is taken a resurgence in recent years. So it's kind of vibrant. There's nowhere really like it on earth. It's not like a London market. It's still, a rusty spanner and a left shoe. And sort of hipster coffees and things. It's a cracking place. There's a great mixture of old world and new, right in the East End of Glasgow, in the shadow of Celtic Park. And they offered us a shop unit. So we opened up again. That'll be 3 years, or 2 years now. Next week. So Zico lives again. And then, of course, then Brian comes sauntering by one day. It all begins again. Full circle, Brian.
Just the thing about that, I want to ask you a question. There's just on that corner, you head down on the corner. There's a guy sits on a chair.
Yeah.
right? And I want to ask you this because you're there all the time. I'm just coming to see you, right? But he can hear him shouting, "Tobacco, tobacco, tobacco."
Yeah.
Then when I'll come round him, "Tobacco, Viagra." Is that just for me, or
and he never
what I look like, or is that normal?
He must see a need in you, Brian. So that is his common refrain. Don't worry, he's not singling you out, Brian. That's what I got when I open up about sort of 9 a.m. I go in and get a coffee, walk round, Viagra, tobacco, Viagra, tobacco, and it's for clubbers and guys that are coming out. And then they'll go, so a couple will walk by and they'll go, Viagra, tobacco. And she'll look back askance at them, he'll smile and they go, are you punching above your weight, mate? Maybe you need it. So there'll be all that going on. So their banter is hysterical. And that was what the Barras was famous for. It was, in the old days, they called them spielers. So ours is more like a shop. So you go into a shop and there's, we've got rails and things and a roof that comes out. But originally there was a barrier and all your stock was behind you. And it was all done on your chat. So all your patter was how you got customers, and you'd build up a crowd. You know, people. It was a bit like Mandel Boy and Rodders would have him in the crowd and setting up. That's what the Barras market was like on a huge scale. So when that sort of selling way of going has died off, and then obviously with COVID, the market got really hit by it. And a lot of people don't realise that the Barras market is still there, and it's over 100 years old. So it's been painted up, looks great, and Brian McClare goes there. So come on down, man. It's a great place. It's absolutely great. We love it there.
There's so many different things. For people watching, it's a wonderful place for that.
The whole East End is. I love it. I mean, and also, I find the East End people are far more weirdly sort of fashion conscious. They are far more into their clothes than the West Endies were. When we were in the West End previously, it was much more vintage and kind of second-hand thing and boho. East End's great. People are far more generous. They spend a lot more money on it as well, and people like nice things. We sell nice things. It's not vintage or second-hand stuff. It's all new. I'd love to be selling more football tops, but they've become ridiculously expensive. So I found a brand in Portugal that does fashion versions of them. And Brian kindly sported one the other day, which was the Newton Heath one. But then you had issues with the colours, Brian, did you?
Well, no, I'm just saying, I've not got issues. I'm just saying that there was a recent story about it that somebody had managed to work out some train spotter that the actual, because it was black and white photographs then, and there's not really anybody out about that went to watch them, that it was actually red and white that Newton Heath wore, not green and yellow, and that was some imaginative person who probably the same one who stole your design for the Celtic strip.
Exactly.
With the green and yellow. Designer
of Celtic strips,
but,
Brian.
That was just a story that I saw kind of recently about that sort of thing. But yeah, there's green and yellow is always going to sell because the great colours going together. I think it's possibly my favourite strip that United had, probably because it was similar to some Celtic stuff.
Absolutely.
Know? You're listening to Life with Brian.
I had a hair transplant last year. I've had laser hair removal on various parts of my body. I've got a ridiculous sports car that I'm petrified of driving and a 15-year-old MG. So I think I'm busted.
Somebody must have told Peter Beardsley that he's a big hit on Athletic Comments. Whether he knows what it is or has listened to it, I don't know.
He just thought, this is great, I'll go and interview him. And to me, that's the best way of doing music writing. The more irresponsible it is, the better it is, really. It's not like proper journalism where you have to put facts in.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You mentioned River City there, and just been cancelled, or it's going to be cancelled. What's your any views on?
Yeah, I think it's really, really sad. I mean, the big. I mean, I've kind of been through it before. So previously, I was in Take the High Road, which was Scotland's only soap at the time as well, which was STV or ITV, and that used to be on all the regions as well. It was a big show with rock stars. So like Suede would come and all that as well because they all loved Mrs. Mac. So unemployed punters in London and rock stars loved it because they were all home and it was an afternoon TV show. So it was great. So it had really good appeal. And it was set in the countryside. So I think that was the appeal. Scotland obviously had a lot of rural appeal then. There was Monarch of the Glen. And none of these shows are really getting made now. And the sad thing is a lot of Scotland still lives in the countryside. There's nothing to reflect that. However, River City was far more city-based, kind of based on more, it looks like White Scotston, but it's kind of based, I think, on Port Glasgow or Greenock. It's that kind of former shipbuilding, working class Scottish Glasgow village. Really gritty. I went into it about 10 years ago, I think, for 6 episodes. I went back for the Christmas special as well, as a gangster. So I went in and stabbed Lenny's the main gangster. I stabbed his son. So I'm one of the few gangsters who survived it. So I'm hoping for a callback before it gets wrapped next year. But it's very, very sad. So I've got lots of friends that work on it, lots and lots of friends that I grew up with because I was a child actor. So I've got lots and lots of friends that were on the crew of that who I've known my whole life. And they're deeply, deeply upset about it because when you get to 20 years, you think the show's safe. The sort of comparison I've got is that the months before we got cancelled at High Road, we named a train. So the Drumgellic Express is the High Road train, the 25-year-old thing. And me, Snedden and Mrs. Mac and Victor, another character, Ian Andrew, we put a plaque on a train. They made a civic reception at the Central Hotel. It was great. And then we had treble the amount of episodes the following year, not knowing that they were backlogging them. So while it was taken off the networks, this is when STV lost a lot of money and they sold the building and everything as well. So they cancelled the show and I was about to fly out to India and I was sitting in a hotel and got a phone call from, it might have been Brian Beacom, it was someone from the Express who said, "What do you think about the show getting cancelled?" And I came back to find the car repossessed, the flat gone, and no more Indian holidays. Done. Completely. So that's when I moved to London. The advantage that the River City punters have got, at least they know this is coming. But I think it's terrible. It's going to leave Scotland as the only country in the UK without their own representative television show, without their own soap opera. I find that a disgrace, to be perfectly honest. I'm still free if they want to hire me for the next 6 months. I actually auditioned for it. I auditioned for it again a couple of months ago, and I didn't get it. So I'm wondering if maybe I've dodged a bullet. I don't think so. I'd love to be back in it. It was great, You
mentioned Take the High Road, Monica the Glen. So obviously you've starred in a lot of Scottish-based things. But I wanted to ask you about something else that you did that was famous Scottish production. And dare I ask how you prepared for your role in Trainspotting 2, getting rogered by an Eastern European prostitute with a big black strap on?
It didn't require much preparation. Rehearsals were wonderful.
Well, maybe yeah. I think there is some preparation required, but
preparation. I don't know. Not to you amateurs. You see, this guy. that was the whole thing about it. The whole thing was that this character. So the great thing about working with Danny Boyle is that you get a whole day's rehearsal or 2 days rehearsal. You get to talk about the character. You have to arrive with a backstory because the first thing he says was, "Tell me about this guy." So you got to arrive with, "Well, I've done a bit of work on this." And my big thing with this was, there wasn't a lot of parts. So if you look at the film again, the whole thing is a sad story about getting older and about these 4 guys getting back together and they've never achieved what they hoped they would. None of them have had their dreams come true. They're all stuck. Renton has a heart issue and decides to come back and sort of make everything good again as well. And they all get drawn together like a tractor beam, like something from Star Wars, And so there's not a lot of parts in it. And so I auditioned for a couple of wee parts and I did a tape, sent it in for this character that was just called Punter. And knew very much what it was. And there wasn't a lot of dialogue, so you had to make a lot of it up. So I ad-libbed it. And I immediately got a call back, "Danny wants to see you." So I'm standing there with at the studios and you could see there was little models of the set and it was all going on. It was like a mini Hollywood. It was great. So I was I said, this is quite exciting. Danny comes out, looks out the office. He says, Simon, I'm just seeing a couple of kids, but see you in a minute. Loved your tape. And I'm standing with Brian McCarty, actor pal of mine as well, who sadly passed away last year. And he went, "Oh, fuck, he fucking likes you, eh?" So I was kind of confident going went into the audition, and Danny was like, "Look, loved your tape. You were terrifying. So could you just fucking terrify me?" So I did. I terrified him. And then he basically held up a pair of cowboy boots and went, "If you get a part, that's your costume." So to the gym, running, training 3 times a day, back to boxing training. I mean, I lost about, I think, 2.5 stone for it in no time. Because it was bollock out. But that sort of job, you just got to go, "Do you know what? There's no preparation for this. You just got to embrace everything." And I didn't really do it anyway. Okay, it was a half dildo. I got cut. Cheap, so.
It was a stunt dildo.
Half a dildo. But it was a monster, because I was looking at it, I was whacking it as well. I mean, the outtakes of this are hysterical. When you're whacking something like that, it's because we rehearsed it and how do you want to do it. And then there was dialogue missing at the beginning. So I think I said, "Grease is up, darling, geese it tight, jailhouse." And they wanted it right down the pipe. And Andrew, the DOP, who's an Oscar-winning DOP, had done these invented this little camera as well, these little cameras. So there's wee cameras everywhere. Like there's a bit where I clock that I'm getting recorded in the little alarm clocks. And I bought them in an auction. No, I was giving them actually in an auction afterwards. I bought loads of the set afterwards. Mental, another story. So he had all these little cameras everywhere as well. And he said, "I want you to go right down the pipe with it as well." And then it came to a bit of editing about 2 months later, and they said, "Can you do a bit of ADR work?" And I went to, first time I'd seen it, so I went to a studio in Scotland, and there was a big screen there, and there I was, my balls flying up onto the bed, the cowboy boots. And they said, "If you can just add some dialogue onto that, just give us something filthy." And there's about 10 people in the room, down the headphones down the line. And what came out of my mouth has made sure that there's a place in hell waiting for me. And it was just a visible gasp, and then an audible gasp, and then, "Thanks, Simon, that's all we need." That was the last time we ever spoke. So I like to think I did a thoroughly professional job on that. But there's a theme there, because I seem to do a lot of sex work. I seem to do a lot of sex work in these films. I think it's Irvin, though. I think when it comes to, I think I'm Irvin's muse. So anything I done with Irvin Welsh, I'd end up bollock naked in. So I don't mind, man. I don't mind. There's an audience in it.
You say that, though. I mean, looking at your acting CV, you mentioned High Road, Monica the Glen, River City, and then Trainspotting too. I mean, it's very varied. Is that what was your inspiration for wanting to take to the stage and screen?
I think because I was a bit of a sort of wild child. So when I grew up in a lovely part of Glasgow, Dad's a doctor and all that as well. My mum used to be a teacher, but I was the firstborn, so I think I was always just a bit wild. I was more like my granny. My granny was an amateur actress, was just a wonderful, wonderful woman, really, really well known, always surrounded by priests for some reason. So I grew up in that environment. I think I was going to be a bit off the rails. So my mum took us down to, my dad was a police surgeon as well, so it didn't help if police cars are taking me back up the road. So I was sent along to a stage school. So Dorothy Paul, that Brian will remember, Dorothy Paul was a big star in the 50s, and came back, was in Still Game and everything as well, before that finished. She had an acting class for kids, and I did so well at it that she took me along to her agent. So about 12, 13, I got my first agent, who was Freddie Young, who is still one of the best agents I ever had. She used to hang up on you, though, before she gave you details. "There's an audition tomorrow, yes, at 12 o'clock. Fuck's sake. She'd have to phone her back 2 or 3 times. I think she was saving the bill. So you'd have to phone her back to get the audition. But she was great. Freddie Young was great, man. Now, her son's Paul Young, who's a famous actor up here as well. So, and she knew everybody, and she was a great agent to have until she retired. So that started it off. So I kept giving it up, because I was still playing football at the time as well. And I was at a rugby school, so I was playing a decent level of rugby as well. So it was mad busy, and I came to leaving school, missed Glasgow Uni by a point, I think, to do, I don't know, English literature or something I didn't want to fucking do. My mother sent me down to do BA Social Sciences at Glasgow Caledonian, and I punched the guy and broke my hand. I didn't want to be at university. And so the last call was Motherwell College, which was right beside the ground, down Dale Drive, to do drama, try and get some sort of qualification in drama, because I had the equity card already. I'd done loads of theatre and all that before, a couple of wee telly things, and then got into the Arches Theatre Company. And the Arches Theatre Company just, I think, made me, I was just so happy. Glasgow at the time, you see, it's a bit different than now. Glasgow had dozens of different avenues for an actor. Loads and loads of theatre companies as well. And the one that I joined, auditioned for, was the Arches Theatre Company. And that was sort of funded by the Arches nightclub. It only closed a few years ago, but that was a great thing. There was the Sits and everything as well. It was all these different companies. And Rain Dog were doing the most exciting stuff. And that was Bobby Carlyle's company. So there was all this. So I got into that, and then very quickly got a line, I think, in Take the High Road in one episode. And 4 days later, something got called in to not even read, just to meet the producers, showing a picture of the castmates that I'd be working with. And then the associate producer walked in and went, "Oh, yeah, very good." And that was my audition. and then I got 8 years on television. So it happens, in those days it happened incredibly quickly. And again, that was my route into a dead sort of varied career, because I would have stayed in something that took the high road for years, had it carried on. Sadly it didn't. So yeah, and then what you got to do is you just got to become a jobbing actor again as well. And I'm dead lucky. I'm dead lucky. I did The Acid House back in which was the next Irvine Welsh film after Trainspotting, and that kind of kicked off my film career as well. So the wonderful thing about being an actor is you do a play, you'll step off that, you'll go into a wee low budget film, you'll do role plays, as I was doing this morning. I was getting prodded and poked at Glasgow Uni Medical School, so which is why I'm naked from the waist down. And yeah, I was sitting on a nice cushion. It was a very in-depth session. But that's the bread and butter of it. So there's no plan to an acting career. I was just dead lucky, right place at the right time. But also at that time, it was really trendy to be a Scottish actor. So go back to the 90s. Braveheart, Trainspotting's out. The Voice. I mean, you never heard this accent, on telly much unless it was, piss-stained drunks or tramps. That's kind of what it was. It was always Jakies were the Scottish Jakey. And all the older Scottish actors were totally pissed off playing that all the time. But with Ewan McGregor and these guys coming through, suddenly the Scottish accent was really, really, on trend, to use a modern expression. So there was loads of work and loads of films getting made, and loads of interest in Scottish culture, and obviously with the rise of Irvine Welsh and Irvine's books and that whole culture as well, it's been great. It's been absolutely great. It's the best job in the world, because when you're working, there's nothing like it. See, if I'd made it as a footballer, I'd have been done at 29, 30.
I'm 61 and I'm not done yet.
Yeah. Run to Tommy Sheridan, you're done.
But can you tell us that story about the Barras and Bollywood?
Oh yeah, Bollywood. So Bollywood's been a strange one as well. So before lockdown, I was with an agent that turned out to be a bit of a boy. This agent, however, at the time we got us this job, and it was filming in Russia, and it was a Bollywood film, and it was the equivalent of Braveheart. It was the story behind the Amritsar massacre, and a true story is that there's a young boy who was wounded at the Amritsar massacre, remembers it. 25 years later, 1940s, he tracks down the guy who ordered the massacre and assassinated him. And a lot of it was hushed up at the time as well, because they didn't want huge race riots and things. But it's a true story. So it was Sardar Udham Singh was the guy's name. And this was his story, but told very much from the Indian perspective. There's a 1970s very good British film, but it's very much Raj time of the Amritsar massacre. But this was a really good film and a Russian co-production. So suddenly you find yourself minus 20 degrees, in St. Petersburg shooting this. And I played King George VI. So I get any white villain role, I get the role in Bollywood movies. So I've done 10 now. And then I was doing one down in Manchester, I think the first time you came by, Brian. And I looked. I was kind of, my worlds sometimes collide. And I kind of looked, and a whole bunch of Indian guys walked by, and they had a kind of cool look to them. Big sort of hair and nodding and kind of, I thought, how do I recognise those guys? I had been filming with them the day before in Manchester, but they're up to blow up a car with a tank, scenes up in Glasgow. So it's been great, man. 10 Bollywood films, and I'm up for another couple just now as well. So I love them. But now they're starting to give me like dialogue. Like lots of dialogue, and you go, well, I can't fucking learn this. So the last time they did it was I did one down in Birmingham, and it's a modern story of women in India coming over for a day trip or a sort of weekend trip to England, and they do a shopping trip, and it kind of reveals what their lives are like back at home. And it's very good. It's kind of right on, great film, but very funny. But they gave me all these lines in Gujarati. I was like, this is a fucking nightmare. So I tried to learn it. I'm sitting up all night with the director's daughter. She's trying to teach me it as well. She's 7. She's great with it. I don't know what I'm doing. So eventually it gets to the point where I'm going to write it out phonetically. And it's a bus scene. So all the women, they all say goodbye to me. I'm this Basil Fawlty type hotel owner. I'm waving them all off in English. Blah, blah, blah. It's great to have you. They get on a bus, and then I've got a whole speech in Gujarati. So I thought, I know what I'll do. So I wrote it up on huge bits of paper, and I stuck it to the back of the bus. So it starts off great, first take, came Joe, Majama, and then the bus fucking drives off, doesn't it? So I've got to run, and it's as Indian drivers, so fucking hearing it down the road, down this private road, and I'm racing after it. It was about 70 takes we shot of me just running down trying to scream Gujarati, so God knows what it's going to make, but do you know what? Special skills. It's added to my modern jazz and tap in my special skills section on the CV. But no, I love it. They're always a wild experience. It's one of these things you kind of get really badly treated on them. You know, British actors, you get a trailer and you get fannied around a lot, and it's all lovely, but it's a little bit, But again, it's to keep you separate and keep you concentrated on what you're doing. You know, keep you so they know where you are. So I get it. But Indian films, there's none of that. It's kind of cattle market. You're all in together, and until you do your first scene, then it's Mr. Simon time. Then you think you're now you can see you can actually do it. So it's a weirdly structured strata system in Bollywood films, but so enjoyable to do if you can do it. If you can hack it, it's great. But my big dream was to go and I did then 1983 or 83 it's called, which is the story of the 1983 Cricket World Cup, which India weren't expected to win, got to the final and beat Viv Richards' West Indies team, who were they were like you in 1982 and Brazil in 1982. They were my favourite cricket team on earth. And amazingly, India won. So there's this whole film, this wonderful Bollywood film called 83. It's on Netflix, give it a watch. And I played a bit in that as well. So the two of them came out at the same time, and there were going to be big Bollywood premieres, and that's what I wanted. I just wanted to go to a big Bollywood premiere in the Kill, all looking forward to it, 95 degrees, because I used to go to India every year, and then COVID hit. So the biggest films I've done, all the premieres were just released online, and then in India as well. So as yet, I've yet to go to an Indian premiere, but I cannot wait. I'll take you if you fancy it, Brian. We'll go.
Been to India a couple of times, yeah, it's brilliant.
I love it. I love it. It's an amazing place. You know, so yeah, it was kind of my second home when I was doing High Road. So I've got High Road to blame for that as well. Not that I'm bitter, Brian.
You also played a big part in the Tommy Burns story, didn't you? I mean, that must have been the ideal gig for combining your two passions in life, didn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we started. It was a writer called David Carswell and I. We started a company to produce. The first one we did was the Benny Lynch story. Now, Benny Lynch was Scotland's first boxing world champion, and was also an unfortunate, terrible alcoholic. Was actually drunk in the ring and things as well, and lost his title from being overweight. You know, I mean, one of these things, in the ring, still won, but that's the title taken off him. And his life then descended into the gutter. And he died tragically. I think he was only 33 or something, or 38 when he died. Tragically young. But again, you know, just a great Glasgow story and a wonderful, wonderful character. So there's plans to try and get a statue to Benny Lynch up as well. There's issues, obviously, with it as well. However, we thought it was about time there was another Benny Lynch play. So that was the first play we did. We were working on a Celtic play at the same time. But the first one was Benny Lynch, and we had, speaking of River City, we had Stephen Purdon, who plays Shell Suit Bob, one of the main characters in River City. He took on the part of Benny Lynch and went to the gym for a year and got himself in great shape. We toured it all around Scotland. It was great. And then we got a deal for the next show. And the next show was going to be another Celtic legend that we might come back to. But it turned out to be the Tommy Burns story. So I just produced it. And then we were lucky enough to approach Celtic. Celtic then put us on in the Kerrydale suite, actually in the ground. And Ange Postecoglou, who was manager, came along then as well, and it was just a wonderful experience. And that's still touring. That went to the Kings, and then so it was great. It was great. I've produced shows, for quite a while, but that was a real pinnacle. You know, to see that at Celtic Park was it was a dream come true.
Well, I was wanting to ask you about why Bob Marley.
Why Bob Marley? Just why Bob Marley as a general statement?
Just why Bob Marley?
Why not Bob Marley? I'll put that back to you, Brian.
Well, I know why I would say Bob Marley, but you've got Bob Marley for me was because Bob Marley loved football.
Absolutely.
And allegedly was a Celtic supporter. So
yeah, he was.
And apparently could play a bit of music as well.
Apparently not bad.
Good at dodging bullets and all.
I've always been obsessed with Bob Marley as well. It's one of these kind of legendary figures. And then my wife's Jamaican, and when we were going to get married, we had to go and get the wedding license in Kingston. So she was down in southeast. We were down southeast Jamaica, St Thomas, which is wild, and then come up to the day for another wild adventure to Kingston. And while we were there, we went to 56 Hope Road, which is Bob Marley's house, and saw his favourite spot and played football in the garden and saw where he was shot and all these things. It was just wonderful, wonderful experience. And we always had Bob Marley T-shirts and things as well in the first couple of shots we had. Anyway, I go to a Celtic game one day and lucky enough to meet up with Dixie Deans, and Dixie's great. And I'd heard this story, this apocryphal story about Dixie was playing in Australia and Bob Marley was touring there. And they met in a bar. And the first time Bob Marley says, "You Dixie Deans, you played for Glasgow Celtic?" And he went, "Aye." And he rhymed off the entire Lisbon Lions, said he'd always been a fan and he was dying to go to Celtic Park. He'd love to play there one day. And his son was a fan and he brought his son at Celtic Strip. So all this, people poo-pooed this and said it was all bollocks for years. But I met Dixie. Dixie said it was all true, and we've got the photos to prove it. So there. So Bob Marley, was allegedly a big Celtic fan. And I think his kids are. You know, I think Damien or Stephen has actually been to Celtic Park as well since. So it's been great. Yeah. Bob Marley, big time.
You were just mentioned there about buying stuff from things you were in, and you've got loads of memorabilia. I've heard about that. But so if you had to, if there was a fire and you had to go and rescue one thing, is there one thing that you cherish above all?
Not from my career, but family history-wise, it would be the 1895 Greenock District Charity Cup medal that used to be on my granny's side table by her bed. She lived with us for a while, and there was always this medal and a picture of a footballer. And the footballer was her uncle, who was a guy called Patrick Boylan, who played for Morton, but then signed for Arsenal, or Woolwich Arsenal as they were then. And he'd won this medal, and his sister used to wear the medal round her neck and all that as well, and official pictures and everything. And I found this wonderful career he had, you know, and he did just a fascinating life, the Boylan family. Just Irish immigrants from Armagh, or Antrim, come via Armagh and then come to Greenock. He's obviously a very, very good player. At that time, 8 of the first team were Scottish. So he signed the same day as a Rangers player, brought down, played most of the season. He would play on Sundays as well with the second team. And then they lost 8-0 to Loughborough. They played 2 games in the same day, because the league and the FA at the time wouldn't agree to postpone it. So they were vying over it, so they had to play 2 games with a very threadbare squad, and they got pumped 8-0. And that was the biggest defeat, I think, for over 100 years. I think Arsenal got beaten about 8-1 or something. Do you remember that? A good few years ago.
United beat them, didn't they?
Yeah, 8-2, was it?
8-2. So that was the only time they'd lost 8 goals since my ancestor Patrick Boylan shipped 8 and ended his Woolwich Arsenal career. So I've got that medal and I've treasured it since I was a wee boy. And I've been doing family history since 1981. I got the first letter to Kevin McCara when I was trying to get some information on the medal. And he passed away as well. But he was a wonderful, wonderful sports historian. And he gave us the whole history and the games, all his games, his signing documents at the FA. Fascinating stuff. So I come from really, really good football in stock. I've got great. There was a great article once where somebody said Simon Weir has third Lanark and football double helixed in his DNA. But what it didn't say was that it skipped a fucking generation.
Well, just that you say that, you know, we're talking about defunct football teams. I've on both sides of my family. My mother's side of the family, he played for Third Lanark in the 50s.
Right, yeah.
My relative, my mum's relative, played for Third Lanark. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the other side, my dad's uncle, he played for Bradford Park Northern.
Really?
Yes.
So you are basically
got a history of putting teams out of existence.
Your family is a fucking jinx.
Yeah. Well,
you're a Jonah. Mind you, my great grandfather was Third Lanark and then Airdrieonians, so he busted 2 of them as well. So yeah, I get it. You're preaching to the converted, my brother.
Previously on Life with Brian.
And he's waving at me, and I'm saying, no, you don't wave to me, Bobby Lennox. I wave to you. That's not how this works. You're a Lisbon Lion. I'm just some guy who wears a beard and swears for a living.
I'm a virgin. I've got all the gear. I've got everything, and I've never, ever caught a salmon.
Supposed to go to the river, not stay in the bar.
He definitely ran over himself. I wasn't sure about the jack of potatoes, but he definitely ran over himself. I remember that.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It's that time again where Matthew and I drag Brian and our guest kicking and screaming into one of our poorly conceived quizzes. which today is inspired by the title of the long-running Scottish soap, River City, which we mentioned earlier, which briefly featured a certain Simon Weir playing a gangster many moons ago. Here's the poorly devised premise. We're giving you both 5 cities each, and you have to tell us which of its football clubs lies closest to that city's major river, if you draw a straight line on a map. It's the usual penalty shootout format, with our guest having the honour of going first. Do you both understand the rules?
Yes. So the principal clubs in the city that are closest to the main river in the city.
Yeah. Correct. Yes. And by the way, if anyone has any objections to these answers, feel free to take it up with the good people at the Ordnance Survey. These are all very inaccurately measured by me using Google Maps. So without further ado, Simon, you get things underway in the fair city of Glasgow with the big 2. Yes.
I would say, well, obviously Ibrox is closer to the...
No, the big 2. It's the big 2, Partick Thistle and Queen's Park.
Oh, Partick Queen's Park, right.
So, which of these lies closest to the Clyde?
Geographically, it must be Partick Thistle.
Well, again, using my caliper tool on Google Maps, Queen's Park, Hampden Park, or Lesser Hampden, whichever you
Third Hampden to me. Third Hampden Park.
It's approximately 1.3 miles to the Clyde, and Partick Thistle's Fir Hill is 1.8 miles from.
Well,
the Clyde.
I will actually. Can I do a little appeal here? Okay, can I do
no steward's inquiries? I'm afraid the judge's decision is final.
This is VAR, mate. This is a VAR thing. I'm John Beaton in VAR here. Listen, I tell you exactly what's happening. You have balls up here because Partick Thistle. It's their second ground. You didn't say, you didn't state that you were talking about the ground in Mary Hill. Originally, they were Partick Meadowside, which is about 500 yards from the Clyde and Partick, because it's part of the shipyard. So I think I will take that.
Well, I don't know if it's a 500-yard difference. It still doesn't make up for the...
Yes, I think...
You're wrong. Admit you're wrong.
Simon, I think your competitive edge is getting the better of you, and you're risking a yellow card here. Referee's decision is final, and I'm afraid you missed your first penalty. So
he's not going to change his mind. Just walk away.
No. Matthew, over to you.
I mean, honestly, I cheated. I feel cheated. Okay, next one. We're up.
Brian, you better smash this one away before he, changes his mind. And we stay in Scotland for your opener, and it's Dundee versus Dundee United, which is closest to the Tay.
Oh, come on!
Remembering, of course, that these 2 grounds are on the same street.
Dundee.
No, according to Mark, I'm going to just blame Mark on every answer here that you disagree with. Mark reckons Tannadice, United's home Tannadice lies closest to the Tay by the difference of a McClare snot clearance.
Yeah, I know that, but
Brian, this is flawed. This is flawed logic on this, man.
Well, like you both missed the first one.
This is a good quiz so far. You should have heard some of them.
Was it the original? Was it the original Tannadice, though?
Right. Okay, Simon, you've got a chance to redeem yourself and go one up. So we're going south of the border this time, and it's Everton versus Liverpool, which lies closest to the Mersey. And I'm going to stipulate that we're talking about Goodison Park here, not the new ground at Bramley Moor Dock, which is literally built on top of the river.
Yeah,
I've taken out that appeal.
Yeah. See, so it's convenient for you to choose which ground.
It says quiz.
For me as the contestant.
Yeah. And Everton haven't played there yet.
No. Life's not fair. I understand that. Life's not fair. Let's say, I'm going to say Liverpool. Because Everton traditionally was the district. I had ancestors in Everton. So Everton was a wee bit out, was it not? Because I've seen pictures of the church and there's no water there. Liverpool.
Okay, you're wrong. It's Goodison Park by about 0.1 of a mile. Prove me wrong, Reds. And remember that Anfield is in Everton. Everton is in Walton.
There's your appeal there, yeah.
Simon, do you know?
Oh, yeah. Good. No, I'll keep my powder dry. I've got another one.
Simon, do you know that which is the closest football ground to the Mersey?
No.
You don't know the answer to that?
Well, the closest ground to the Mersey?
Yeah.
No, Everton's new ground.
No. Well, it will be.
It will be.
At the moment, it's not.
I said Liverpool. Apparently not.
Then the question, but that's not the closest ground to the Mersey at present.
Oh, who else is in Liverpool? I don't know.
Stockport County.
Stockport County closest.
The Mersey runs starts over in Manchester. The hills of Manchester.
Don't worry, Simon. We're not going to take a point off you for that one as well.
No.
Just to
There's no points to take off.
Why don't you?
There's none to take off. You can go in minus. Right, Matthew, why don't you get Chucky to introduce?
Golden nuggets, and this is what I get in return. Okay.
Where am I? Oh, yeah, second penalty now, aren't we, Brian? Now, which lies closest to the River Avon? Is it Bristol City or Bristol Rovers?
City.
Well, I don't know whether you knew that or it was just one of your lucky guesses, but yeah, you're correct. Ashton Gate is a fair bit closer than Rovers Memorial Stadium, according to.
It is. That one's not even close. I'll stand behind that
Nancy Willis map.
I just happen to have a Bristol Ordnance Survey map on the wall of the room.
Tattooed on his inside thigh.
The wallpaper.
All right, so Simon, you're one behind. So this is the first of our capital conundrums. We start south of the River Thames, but which is closer, Millwall or Charlton Athletic?
Millwall.
You're going down the Emmett Scanlon route of trying to miss every single one of these, aren't you? It's actually Charlton by about 400 metres. So
Millwall, was Mill not originally Isle of Dogs?
Well, that's not where they play. Yeah. No, they play at the New Den, don't they? The New Den is again down that way somewhere, but Charlton is actually closer.
I'm going to have to do a bit of research on this app.
I would say Fergie would have loved to have you in one of his teams, wouldn't he? Like chirping and complaining at the refereeing decisions. And,
I wouldn't have got past carrying the hamper out for Fergie's team. I don't think. No. Very disappointing. But the thing is, I will to win, and I like winning. So I'm more like I've got the anger of Roy Keane, so I'd get in there somewhere. Right, go again.
Okay, so Chucky, Simon had South London, so that means you get North London. So which is closer to the Thames, Arsenal or Tottenham?
Arsenal.
Yes, yeah, you're right. The Gunners win this by some margin, around 3 miles to 6. So
he got easier questions about.
All right, Simon, you've got to score this one. And your penultimate spot kick takes us back up north to Sheffield. And which lies closer to the River Don? Is it Wednesday or United?
United.
Oh, another one.
I've done it.
Another one. You've done it again. Yeah, the River Don runs right behind Hillsborough. Yeah, it's a fair way, around a mile or so from Bramall Lane, as the crow flies. So you're 0 for 4, and you now cannot win.
You can't win.
You're going for it. I must say, you're doing it in style.
Yeah.
So it's Scotland rugby team all over again, isn't it?
It is.
Brian, your fourth penalty takes us to the banks of the Trent in Nottingham. 2 grounds which I know you've played in before. But which is closest to the river, Nottingham Forest or Notts County?
I think they run past both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Forest.
Yeah, according to Mark, I stipulate, according to Mark.
It's got a bridge on it. It's Trent Bridge. Of course he's going to get that right.
Well,
he's played.
Forest
he's asking questions with places he hasn't played. This is a total fix.
Forest nicked this one by about 100 metres, apparently, being right by the river, whereas Meadow Lane slightly further away on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
3-0. Okay. Well,
you know, Brian, you happy, yeah?
Right, Simon. Simon, you hopefully we're throwing you a bone here with your conclusion. Where else?
Just put the answer then.
Where else but back in Glasgow with Celtic and Rangers? Which one lies closest to the Clyde this time?
Rangers, Ibrox.
Well, by my calculations,
it's not. It's Celtic, isn't it?
It's Celtic by about 100 metres. Yeah.
Oh, you've joined the Wooden Spoon Club. You and Emmett Scanlon.
Yeah.
This is a really shite quiz, by the way. Shite quiz.
That's a compliment.
No. It's not. No. The whole thing.
You should have heard the other 55 we've done.
This is just. I'm fucking so pissed. I was really enjoying this, and now you're going to see bad signs.
I can just see you sometime later this week wandering around Glasgow with one of those yard wheels between Ibrox
and Nottingham and
Celtic Park to the Cunningar Loop.
You're asking him who's played in these places. He's got such an unfair advantage. Why don't we ask about like modern jazz and tap? Why don't we go to some theatrical questions? Favourite films? If I come back on this, I'm doing the quiz, and you're getting it all of you.
We'll do that for the live show.
Mr. Obscure. I thought it'd be like football history and things. Geographical. Bollocks, man.
You're listening to the wrong podcast for that.
Yeah.
Brian, you can really rub salt in here, Brian, and your final attempt is close to home for you. So Manchester United versus Manchester City. Which is closer to the River Island store in the city's Arndale Centre?
City.
Now he's happy. Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a guess.
He's done it again?
I don't know if it's a guess or you've walked back there after buying yourself a new sweater.
No,
but,
I just know how far it is.
Yeah. Do you want to take a guess by how many miles?
It's the miles, is it?
Well, according to Mark's...
yeah, I would say I can walk from the Arndale to the Etihad in about 35 minutes. It takes me 55 to walk to Old Trafford.
You know what that sounds about? 1.7 miles to Etihad and 2.5 miles to Old Trafford. So that works about right if walking at an old man's pace.
Yeah.
I don't walk at an old man's pace. So I want to walk in football. Nick, put me down for walking football, Simon. I can walk faster now than I could run.
Tommy runs the team. Tommy, so you might not get a game.
Okay, well, after the quiz, it's a conclusive victory for Brian. That one, quite the victory. Anyway,
sorry, Simon. It's not. I don't know anything about these quizzes, so I apologise for your ire.
Yeah, he is kept in the dark, by the way. We put him in one of those little booths, like they used to do on Mr. and Mrs. when we discuss these quizzes. So Brian knows nothing about them. There's no fix.
And well, as has been customary this season, we're going to squeeze out the final drops of personal info about our guest in our Focus On feature, an homage to the Shoot and Match magazine profiles of the past. Simon, you'll have seen these many times yourself, and you were once upon a time on the excellent Shoot the Breeze podcast as well, where you used to cover this kind of thing. Usually we choose some of the questions put before Chucky in his old interviews, but this time we're changing it up a little bit and giving you a selection that were asked to his former Celtic teammate in the 80s, Paul McStay, who, it has to be said, gives some of the most Celtic answers possible to some of these. It's quick fire, Simon, so are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, full name?
Simon Weir.
Birthplace and date?
Glasgow, 5573.
Favourite player?
Brian McClare.
That's a lie. It's Mark Hughes.
It was Mark Hughes. Manchester United player Mark Hughes. Celtic player Brian McClare. Jesus. David Providence as well.
Paul McStay, unsurprisingly, answered Kenny Dalglish. Favourite other team?
Third Lanark.
Paul McStay said Celtic Reserves. Most memorable match?
1985 Scottish Cup final, 2-0 Celtic.
2-1.
2-1, sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. First. Yeah.
Biggest influence on your career?
Ooh. My granny.
Favourite film?
Favourite film? Favourite film? Favourite film's a difficult one. Mean Streets, probably.
Favourite actor and actress?
Robert De Niro, for obvious reasons as well. And actress, maybe Halle Berry.
Favourite meal?
Oh, God, so much to choose from. Favourite meal, fish supper, Glasgow fish supper.
Paul McStay chose the very 1980s footballer choice of steak and chips. And finally, and again, you could probably guess who Paul McStay said for this one, perhaps, given his Celtic connection. But which person would you most like to meet?
Well, I met Muhammad Ali, so that's done. Who would I most like to meet? Robert De Niro, actually. Do you know that? I'd love to meet De Niro. I know he's really difficult, though. He's a real prickly bastard, but I think I could get through to him.
And
I bet Paul McStay didn't say that, did he? Prickly bastard.
Well, unless he said that about Pope John Paul II, who I always thought was quite a kindly old man rather than a prickly bastard. But yeah.
Oh, God, that went wrong, didn't it?
Okay, that's a wrap for this episode then. And firstly, a big thanks to Simon Weir for coming on the show. It's been brilliant. Thanks very much, Simon.
Brilliant,
Thanks.
Simon. Absolutely brilliant.
Except that test thing, that was nonsense.
Well, now apart from you taking a tape measure across some of the UK's biggest cities to determine stadium locations, what's next for you that we might see you in?
Interestingly, I've got a few things coming out. I've got a couple of films coming out as well. I've got a film called Psycho Sex Dolls that's out just now as well, which you'll love. Which is about, it's not what you think. It's not as bad as you think, but it's about an aging pornographer, me, who is failing and sees an advert for live sex dolls, and he thinks, I'll put them into my films and make a fortune. Unfortunately, it goes very wrong. That's out just now. That's coming out, I think, on Amazon Prime, I think, recently. And I'm going back on stage, actually. So you guys have had Scott Kyle on before and talked about Billy and Tim. Singing I'm No Billy's a Tim.
Yep.
Well, I first produced that show 20 years ago, and I'm going back into it. It's the 20th anniversary tour, so I'm going in for some of the English dates as well. So I'm going back. I'm too old, but I'm going back to play Tim for one last whack at it. So that would be nice. So yeah, but singing I'm No Billy's a Tim in April. I'll be touring. I'll be touring towns and villages in northern England. Look out for me. I think we're finishing in Corby. So that's on scottkyle.com on the website. So go and look at the dates as well. You might catch me in it if I can learn the lines. It's been 20 years. You know?
And coming on here is a good omen, because if you've always seen what Scott's been doing lately, he's just been recently in a whiskey advert with Harrison Ford.
Exactly, and I've not stopped hearing about it. So good.
Brian, Matthew, thanks very much. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
All of you.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Yeah. And last but not least, thanks to you out there for listening. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts in order to get notifications when new episodes are coming your way. Follow us on X and Blue Sky at Brian McClare Pod. And I believe we're back on Instagram after getting hijacked some time ago. Matthew, what's the handle there, please?
Oh, you put me on the spot now.
You don't know, do you?
It's Life with Brian Pod.
It's the quiz over again, isn't it?
At Life with Brian, but yeah. We'll be back again soon as yet another football season limps towards its conclusion. So please join us again for more of this. Cheers.
Life with Brian, talking films or music. Life with Brian, talking TV and food. Life with Brian, talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, talking politics and football. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, Life with Brian.